Now that the NBA Finals are going down and only 2 teams are left standing battling it out for the title, the entire rest of the league is at home switching their focus to the offseason. Players are enjoying their time off, coaches are scheming up new ways to make their teams play better next year, and front offices are cooking up ways to get new players in the door to take their teams to another level. Media outlet Bleacher Report just published an article proposing one trade that every eliminated team should consider making this offseason, and in today's video, I picked out the 4 most intriguing deals from this article to analyze them. As always, we'll be going through each one discussing why or why not the teams involved would do the deal, who would benefit the most from them, and whether or not it's even a realistic possibility. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first proposal from the article we'll be looking at is between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Phoenix Suns, and in it the Lakers receive Chris Paul in exchange for D'Angelo Russell in a sign-and trade, plus Malik Beasley. The Lakers' ability to revive their season last year and go from being one of the worst teams in the West to making the Western Conference Finals should give them a lot of momentum going into next year, with the ability to try to make one final run at a title in the LeBron James era. LeBron hinted at retirement in his post-game press conference, but I doubt he'll actually be finished, but what it does mean is that this may be the team's last chance to make some noise with him there. With this deal in particular, the clear and obvious connection to Chris Paul is the fact that he and LeBron James have been best friends for years and years, and the idea of them having their final rides in the league together is going to be romanticized. Basketball-wise though, it is interesting. Paul is no longer the kind of player who can dominate a game start to finish on both ends of the floor, but in LA, sharing ball handling duties and playmaking duties with LeBron James could actually help him a ton. The Lakers are going to also be in clear need of a new point guard, as they don't seem very keen on re-signing D'Angelo Russell, and Paul's synergy with LeBron, plus his ability to provide in an area of need, actually makes a lot of sense. For Phoenix, the playoffs showed that they are just simply in need of more help in general. Their lack of depth hurt them a ton, and D'Angelo Russell is both younger and an objectively better scorer than Chris Paul in the year 2023. Malik Beasley also gives the Suns another much-needed shooter in the rotation, and honestly, I don't mind this trade for either side. I'm not sure if the deal drastically changes things for either side, but the logic is sound for both teams involved entertaining it. The next deal from the article we'll be discussing is between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New Orleans Pelicans, and in it the Thunder receives Zion Williamson in exchange for Chet Holmgren and 2 first-round picks. This is a crazy trade to lay your eyes on, because there's just so much to take into consideration here. The Thunder are a team that can clearly afford to take a swing on a big blockbuster trade for a star, because the amount of expendable assets they have is overflowing at this point, and their young team showed that they're ready to compete right now by making it to the play-in tournament this season. The Thunder have an absurd amount of draft capital at their disposal, so they'd happily include the 2 picks in this particular trade, but the conundrum comes down to moving Chet Holmgren before he even suits up for them. Zion Williamson, when he's on the court, is one of the most dominant and unstoppable interior scorers in the league, and his physical tools and ridiculous athleticism would be perfect in Oklahoma City, where the team loves to get out and run. The issue, of course, is that Williamson has not shown that his health can be trusted. Holmgren, though, has very similar concerns. Holmgren's height and skill as a shooter and defender are very intriguing, obviously, but he's already showing that injury concerns come with his baggage too, and with how skinny he is, those concerns won't be going away in the physicality of an 82-game NBA season. Giving up on him before he even plays a game is also obviously a risk, because his ceiling is pretty high, but there's no guarantee that he ever becomes what we know Zion Williamson can be at full strength. Ultimately, I don't think this kind of a deal will ever go down, because on top of everything I've said, the Pelicans are also just still trying to put together a winning formula, so this is the kind of deal they'd only make if they gave up on those plans, which obviously they're not going to do. The next deal from the article that we'll be going over is between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Boston Celtics, and in it the Blazers receive Jaylen Brown in exchange for Anthony Simons, Nasir Little, and the number 3 pick in this year's draft. The Jaylen Brown situation in Boston is going to be one of the leading stories all offseason, until it comes to a conclusion, and one of the many paths the Celtics will have to explore is whether or not it makes sense to trade him. Brown is going into the final year of his contract next season, and after that, the Celtics will either have to fork over a monstrous contract extension that can be worth up to $295 million total, or they can trade him for a decent package in return before his contract expires. Otherwise, he's going to leave them for nothing in return. The number 3 pick in this draft is what makes this trade such a risk, though, because while Jaylen Brown is very ideal as a star to pair with Damian Lillard in Portland, the price tag here could prove to haunt them for years to come. Scoot Henderson is the consensus number 2 prospect in this draft behind Victor Wembanyama, but he's not a lock to be picked 2nd overall by the Hornets, and if Henderson does fall to the 3rd pick, then the Blazers passing on the ability to draft him for a few above-average seasons with Lillard and Brown together is the kind of decision that could get a GM fired. The Celtics would be all over this in that scenario, but only if the pick can turn into Scoot Henderson, in my opinion. Simons provides sharpshooting on high volume, which is a welcome sight in the Celtics backcourt, and Little has shown a ton of promise defensively, so the Celtics would still be a top team. They'd also just happen to have a young budding superstar at their disposal as well in this scenario, which I'm not sure would actually happen. I don't think this trade is likely to go down. And finally, the last proposal from the article that we'll be going over is between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Wizards, and in it the 76ers receive Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma in exchange for Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, Furkan Korkmaz, Daniel House, and a 1st-round pick. The possibility of the Sixers having James Harden leave in free agency is going to hurt, and if it happens, then that's where this trade would come into the realm of possibility, but the idea of this trade seems to be based on what Beal was a few years ago, not what he is right now. If we were talking about the Bradley Beal that was averaging over 30 points per game in back-to-back seasons, then yeah, I could see this kind of a price tag being warranted, but he hasn't done that since 2021, and the last 2 seasons, his production hasn't been anywhere close to that, averaging a more modest 23 points per game on decent shooting splits both of the last 2 years. This is going to sound like a bold claim, but I'm not even sure that Beal will be the better player than Tyrese Maxey for much longer, as Maxey has shown tremendous improvement in each of his 3 seasons, while still being just 22 years old right now, while Bradley Beal is starting to trend downward as he's about to turn 30 years old. Maxey's coming off of a season where he scored 20 points a night, shooting the ball incredibly well, making 48% of his shots and 43% of his threes, and in this hypothetical scenario where James Harden leaves, Maxey's involvement is going to shoot up even further, which would result in another big bump in production. I know the Sixers have a tight window to contend in right now, and getting off of Tobias Harris's contract in this deal also seems nice, but ultimately it's a huge overpay for a declining Bradley Beal who also has a detrimental supermax contract and is barely better than Tyrese Maxey right now. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these potential trades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.